Tonight, America loses one of its greatest heroes. And later, we discuss Mail in Amazing Spider-Man issue 563. Or at least we would if we had Mail in it. And we have a guest, Reggie, from Reggie's Take. All this on True Believers. Well, that was interesting. All right. So, Nation, we're losing an icon, and that's Stephen Colbert. If you haven't seen it, Thursday was his last show, and it was a great show, and he's really done a lot to like he's just been such a powerful force on Comedy Central and throughout the world, and that brings us to tonight's word, rapport. Now, if you've ever seen the show, Stephen Colbert does a bit called The Word. Of course, since television is a visual medium, I had to bring in a friend. Reggie, how's it going?
I'm all right. How are you?
Pretty good. We're going to try this out. We're going to do the word.
Okay.
So, let's begin. Tonight's word, rapport. Stephen's done a lot of things. In his early career, he played a superhero in the ambiguously gay duo, and then a closeted gay teacher in the show Strangers with Candy, before becoming a conservative pundit on Comedy Central.
A natural progression.
Colbert joined The Daily Show in 1997.
You know that show with Craig Kilborn?
And was so popular that he was granted his own show in 2005. In 2006, Colbert appeared at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where absolutely no one got the joke.
Popular vote? Har, har, har.
This was arguably Colbert's defining moment. In 2008, Colbert threw his hat in the ring for presidential election, though South Carolina Democratic Party refused on the grounds that he wasn't serious.
We so serious.
That's supposed to be why so serious. That's a typo on my part. Colbert also shaved his head in support of our troops while taping in Iraq, had a Canadian Hockey League mascot named after him, had a NASA space station treadmill named after him, won multiple Emmy Awards, a Grammy Award, and 2 Peabody Awards. And now he closes that chapter to replace Letterman on The Tonight Show.
Because leaving a show at the height of its popularity to host some dusty dinosaur show worked so well for Conan.
And that brings us back to tonight's word. We'll be right back. Just kidding. We're going to stay right here. So, were you a fan of Colbert?
Never really watched it.
Really?
I mean, I think my father-in-law, liked watching it, but I never really, I think it was never on when I was home because of my work schedule. And
right.
It's just one of the things, if you don't get into it, you just never really watch it. Yeah. It's kind of like any other show. If you don't, I don't know. I'm sure it's probably funny if I would have watched it, but
it was really an interesting show because, I remember, well, first off, I remember when he was a correspondent on The Daily Show.
Now, did he have a certain unique type of sense of humor that either you got or didn't get, or was it pretty general?
He was very different. The whole concept of his show is, it's like an extreme satire. The whole concept of his show is that he's actually a character. He is a satire or a parody of conservative pundits, like Bill O'Reilly. So he gets these guests on, be them political, not just political, but celebrities, scientists, mathematicians. He gets a wide array of guests, and what he does is he interviews them, and he pretends to be this blowhard conservative pundit. So he asks them like really just odd questions, but the questions always have a point. So these guests come on, and a lot of them think that they're answering a question, but their answer is actually answering another question, if that makes sense. It's really amazing. Like, for instance, one of his last shows, I think it was on Tuesday night or Wednesday night or something, he had Seth Rogen on. Seth Rogen has been in the news. I
Well,
don't know if you've
gee,
heard
I don't
about
know
that.
for what movie that would be.
But so this would have been before Sony pulled the interview, which is, if you haven't heard, Seth Rogen and James Franco made a movie called The Interview about an assassination attempt on Kim Jong Un. Uh, the North Koreans weren't happy about it, so allegedly they're the ones that hacked Sony, and now all these movie theaters wussed out and said, "Oh, we're not going to show it because we don't want 9/11 attacks." Blah blah. Now Sony is pulling it indefinitely, like they're not even going to show it. That, like, as far as we know, it's not even going to hit home video. Now, I highly recommend you download it. It looks like a terrible movie, but I am going to download it illegally if I have to, because that is my right as an American to see this terrible movie, and I don't need Kim Jong Un or these wussy executives at Sony telling me I can't see it. And it looks like I didn't even want to see it.
It looked
terrible.
It looked like a stupid Seth Rogen comedy, but
Yeah.
I think Sony was wrong in saying, no, we're going to pull it.
Of course they were, because they're
if they were worried about, quote, possible attacks, okay, I can see maybe delaying it till after the holiday season,
Sure.
just to be on the safe side. But
Sure.
but I think they should at least quietly just send it back out to theaters. Sometime in January.
North Korea made. That's what they do. They make threats. Like, I mean, that's what terrorists do. Like, you don't let them win. You don't cower and say we give up. We throw our hands up. I don't want Kim Jong Un telling me what movies I can and can't watch. And what sort of precedent does this send? Have you heard George Clooney wrote a petition, and he makes such a good point. He says that what sort of precedence does this send if now we're worried about what other countries
may think of a movie?
Yeah. So, what sort of movies are we going to see now? I mean, it's pretty lame.
I mean, because other than the North Korean leadership, who has access to the outside world, no one else in North Korea even A, probably knows about this movie, B, would ever see it in the first place.
Well, the whole point is to get their propaganda machine going with their people and say, look, they're making this horrible movie about us,
and we got
them to stop.
Right?
Yeah. And we really met they and Obama's mad about it. Like he's like, why didn't Sony call me? Like they really messed up.
Yeah,
they really did.
And see, so I read an article. I don't remember who it was by, but someone wrote, it's like, the North Koreans didn't complain when Olympus Fallen came out and they had North Koreans as the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't never complain when the remake of Red Dawn came out with North Koreans as the bad guy, but yet they complain about this one. And my feeling is it's only because it had their leader in it, supposedly, that they got upset over it.
And I've also read that this is just a long series of calculated attacks. Or threats. They've often threatened Japan and, of course, South Korea.
See, I think,
and this is what they do. They send these threats.
See, and I personally think they're starting to use the internet and quote cyberbullying as a way of threatening the world, because they know if they tried anything military, they'd pretty much get wiped off the map.
Oh, yeah.
But even China's come down on them hard, which is surprisingly at times, considering they're kind of buddies in a certain sense. China's even scolded them publicly to a certain extent. So I think they knew privately they would get their ass kicked by everybody else, so they've resorted to, let's bully everyone on the internet.
Yeah. And I mean, this sort of thing has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just what they do. But anyway, going back to the original point, Seth Rogen was on Colbert, and this was before Sony pulled it. And by the way, Seth Rogen is a terrible interviewer. Like, I don't know if he was so nervous because of all this crap that's happening to him right now, or if he was just high out of his mind. But he didn't seem quite with it.
You almost have to wonder if he's got extra security around him right now.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure he does, yeah.
Even though publicly he'd probably say, no, I'm just going about my business as normal. But you'd almost have to wonder privately if he hasn't beefed up his security.
Well, he said on Colbert that he'll probably never go to South Korea again after this.
Oh.
Even South Korea, because
too much chance of someone from North,
yeah. But so Colbert asked him. He said, and again, this is how ingenious Colbert is. He asked him, when you were writing this movie, why didn't you? Did you think, well, maybe I should change his name, maybe to Phil Jong-un or something? And it was funny, but like, you know, and that's a perfect example of the sort of questions he would ask. They sound funny and stupid, but then you have to, but they're not. There's an underlying
real question
reason, and these people interviewing have to answer. And Rogan had to, and he's like laughs nervously, haha, yeah. And then he starts talking, and then he kind of gives his answer. And, you know, it wasn't a joke answer. What he said was, we thought about changing his name, but ultimately we were like, everyone knows who we're talking about here. And it really kind of reveals the process that they were going through, was that, oh, nothing's going to happen, you know. I mean, they didn't, I don't think they thought it through. Now, I'm not blaming them for any of the problems. I mean, you have to blame North Korea, but I don't think they thought through what was going on. And that's the genius of Colbert. And there are a lot of all those things I said about him are true. In 2008, he did run for president, so to speak, but which was kind of a joke, but it was kind of serious too. All of his donation proceeds went to charity. And actually, if I can bring that up, I'll show.
So, do you think Colbert's type of humor or whatever it is he plans on doing will translate to the late night shows on CBS?
That is, I don't know. Like, I mean, as a fan,
I know he's probably accepted.
I
mean, he was obviously accepted and liked for what he was doing. I mean, will people accept him, or will they be expecting the same thing on?
I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot, honestly. As a fan, I think, what is this show going to be?
And will CBS give him the time, a certain amount of time to let the audience come to him? Because you have to think, initially, the first week or so, he's going to get watched, just to see what he does. But there's going to be a drop off. I guess my thing is, will CBS give him a long enough time to, in the long term, see what kind of audience he does garner after a certain amount of time, to whether or not it was worth the move?
I would be surprised if CBS made the same mistake that NBC did with Conan. I really would. I think even if the ratings are low at first,
they'll give him at least.
I can't imagine Letterman's ratings being that high anymore. Anyway, like
Letterman, and I think Letterman. I think right now, I think the leader of the late night stuff is probably the Tonight Show with Fallon.
Really?
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for a while there, Jimmy Kimmel was doing quite well, and I think that's what got NBC nervous of finally ousting Jay Leno and getting someone younger in there. And I think Letterman and Leno kind of ran their course. I mean, I mean, you get on there on some show for 20 some years. They
were great. I know a lot.
I mean,
of
at the
Conan
height
fans,
of their popularity, they were great. But you know, I think that younger movement of Kimmel's type of humor and what he was doing, I think, was starting to draw in the younger audience, because you had two older guys that maybe the younger guys younger people just didn't really get their humor anymore. And I think maybe, I don't know, it's just my opinion, but
no, I agree with you. Letterman, well, I know this, a lot of Leno fans not Leno fans, a lot of Conan fans hate Leno. A lot of Letterman fans have hated Leno for 30 years. And
I know Kimmel doesn't. Kimmel was always taking jabs at Leno.
You know, I'm gonna say this about that. Kimmel always takes jabs at Leno He has been taking jabs at Leno ever since the Conan fiasco. He's been doing, which I mean I agree with what he's saying, but at the same time it's like for somebody who t- who makes so much fun of Leno, he sure does steal a lot of his stuff. Like Kimmel has his own version of jaywalking and all this. Like I mean it's like, all right, dude. Like, I kind of think you're on the hate Leno bandwagon right now. Like, I think you just jumped on it, but you kind of stole a lot of his bits, or not stole, but borrowed. I wouldn't say stole them, but I mean, yeah. I mean, so come on, Kimmel. But
The only thing about Kimmel I really enjoyed was when they sometimes he'll have people send in their YouTube stuff, like to have the parents tell the kids that they ate all their Halloween candy and get the reactions, and their censorship thing is kind of funny at times, But
Kimmel, yeah, and I wasn't. Kimmel is funny, but I'm just that aspect of him I don't like, that he jumped on the Leno bandwagon. Like, even though I agree with him, like I feel like he kind of is too similar to Leno to be really jumping all over that.
Yeah.
Like, but.
And his running gag with Matt Damon. Did you ever see the episode where Matt Damon supposedly gagged and tied him to the chair for the entire, and then Damon hosted the show? No, that was a scream.
That was pretty funny.
That was a scream.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they've got this thing of, they obviously got to be friends and like each other because they keep doing this running gag. And if Damon really didn't, whatever, he wouldn't have come on and hosted the show like he did. So there's obviously some sort of rapport there, and Matt Damon's obviously okay with the running gag, which is kind of funny because he's still doing it even though he's been on the show a couple times now. It's still going. Oh, sorry, we ran out of time for Matt Damon. So you just wonder how long that'll keep continuing.
Another thing, yeah. But I mean, I do wonder what Colbert is going to be like on his show. I mean, I think he's retiring the character.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere where he said he's gonna put what he's doing now on away and try and be try to be a comedian and try and be that late night what you expect. But...
And I get where he's coming from. Like, he's been doing this the show is on for 9 years, but he's been doing it if you count the Daily Show, he's been that character for like 13 years, I think. At least, if he joined in 1997, he's been doing it for a very long time.
And
I
I'm
think
sure
he's ready to retire.
And I'm sure he'll bring some similarities maybe to the Late Show. But
the one thing that I hope doesn't die is Colbert really is one of these. He really is one of these comedians that really changed the world, and I mean, not really changed the world, but did a lot of amazing stuff. And I'm a out of all these guys, I'm a Conan fan #1, but I mean, like the Team Coco stuff has nothing on this. Like, I mean, on the Colbert Nation. It's so funny how they all have their own team names, but the Colbert Nation, like the stuff that he did, the type of awareness and money that he raised through comedy. I mean, he's got a treadmill in space. He's got a lot. He raised a lot of money when he went to Iraq and shaved his head, and he raised a lot of money for his super PAC. And like I said, when he ran for president, all of those political donations he gave to charity. Like, I mean, that was his goal all along. He wasn't really going to use that money for a political campaign. All that campaigning money he made in South Carolina, he donated it to various charities. And when he shaved his head, he donated that to some veterans affair. I don't know which one, but I mean, he really did a lot, and I hope that he keeps that going. I don't know how he's going to do it, but I hope he does. But even his awareness and politics, but beyond politics and science, the stuff that he was raising on that. I mean, by having doing work with incredibly smart people is just really what he's done. Has been really important for a lot of people. I mean, uh, and I think where this all started was after he started his show. I think a year after he started his show back in 2006, he was brought into the White House for the what is that, the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Right.
And when he went up there, his bit sounded like he was like praising George W. Bush, but it but it was since he was this stupid character, it was doing the opposite, and it was actually like insulting him. But then he didn't stop at Bush and the Republicans. Then he turned around and like did the same thing with the media. So like nobody liked it. Like the Bush people were mad, and then the media and the Democrats were mad because they got burned just as bad as they did. Like,
so he spread the wealth equally in a sense.
I don't know about equally, but he got them both. And you know as well as I do how media people are. Like they feel like they get a little entitled and they get a little touchy. They feel like they're untouchable with this sort of stuff, and when it happens to them, they get a little touchy about it. And the reviews for it were scathing. The media hated it.
Well, to me, if you're the media or a politician, you should expect to be made fun of.
I think the politicians actually, I think Bush handled it, like the Republicans and the politicians handled it better than the media did. The media can't handle when the fingers are turned on them.
I mean, obviously, when the president's staff invites a comedian to these correspondent dinners, you have to expect at some point, they're going to take a shot at you. They're going to take a shot at the other party. It's whether or not how well you can laugh it off and let it roll off your shoulders and go on.
You need to watch it sometimes. It was actually, I remember it and I rewatched it here recently, and it's brutal. And he's like, Bush is laughing pretty nervously. Like, I mean, it isn't like, it isn't like the old days when Don Rickles would come to Reagan and just make fun of everybody, but for like, typical stuff. Like Colbert is basically like, you're doing a terrible job as president. The media is doing a terrible job as reporting. But he's saying it really funny, but like everyone's pretty mad about it. But that instance, I think, is when he got attention from the world. Like, what he did was like a new form of satire that no one really understood. And I mean, like, the first year when he started, I wasn't a fan because I didn't get it. Like, I was like, I never really watched Fox News before then, or MSNBC, or whichever one you want to pick. But I mean, mostly he's making fun of Fox News.
Yeah.
But I never really watched stuff like that before. And then when I started seeing it, I was like, oh, I get it now. I think, and for me, it was also that White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's like, I get it now. This is different. So I think that's how that started, and people started taking notice and to what he was doing, and he took off with it, and he really brought a lot of awareness to a lot of things through comedy, and that's something even Jon Stewart can't do. And I love Jon Stewart, but I don't tune in for the laughs. Like if I watch Jon Stewart, I just get kind of PO'd because because he's speaking, because the stuff he's talking about, it's just like, God, man, this country, yeah, but then like after that you get Colbert, and it's like, well, it's funny now. Like, I mean, this stuff sucks, but I'm laughing now. So now I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, because I don't think the guy replacing Colbert is that good. I forget his name, but
so what are they gonna do with Colbert show then on?
They're replacing him with another correspondent from the Daily Show, but Larry something, starts with a W. I don't think he's really like he's funny, but I don't think he's funny enough to do his own show. But that's how it goes.
So is this the most serious the True Believers have ever been?
No,
even though you're missing quote
no,
one of
we
your
had
one of your true believers.
no, we had Enrique and I did a couple. Like we did one on. I think we did two on. We was it 2 episodes or just one? I think we did 2 episodes on like gay marriage in comics. One was X-Men, where apparently Marvel's cool with having gay X-Men get married, and then the other was Batwoman, and that was a big fiasco because DC wouldn't let her get married. They had some BS reason. They said, "Oh, superheroes can't get married" or something, which is total lame. Like Peter Parker got. I know they destroyed it in Marvel, but Peter Parker got married. Superman and Lois, I think, got married. I mean, I don't think that exists anymore. But like, it's like, why can't they get married? Like what sort of message are you trying to send here? So, and actually, so the writer and artist of Batwoman quit, which is a shame because it was actually really good. Like you would think, like what is Batwoman? Like some loser character trademark that they had in the 50s and just have to renew it every 20 years so that they can keep the name, but which is all it is. But they really made a really good comic out of it. DC, I think, like, even though, like, I think Marvel is still, like, more hip. Not hip. No one says hip anymore. Marvel is more
to go with the times.
socially, yeah, they're more socially
up to date.
But DC, I gotta say, they're writing, like, the stories are better, so pick and choose. Although Marvel, like I've said it before, Hawkeye has his own comic, and it's really good.
Really?
Like, really good. It's funny, it's action-packed, it's the art is amazing. It's got just nice little moments throughout. Like it's just really good. But so Stephen Colbert has appeared in a couple Marvel comics.
I see. I did not know that. You're saying that before we started, and
Yeah.
I did not realize he had. Now, in the comics, or are you talking comics or movies or?
Comics, not movies.
Okay.
But like he appeared in Amazing Spider-Man issue 573. Now there is a variant cover art, which if you'll look at it.
Is that the one you posted online
Yeah,
recently?
if you look at it, it's based on Amazing Fantasy 15, which was Spider-Man's debut, only Stephen Colbert is swinging, and he's got Spider-Man by his grip, and it's a really funny cover. I love what he's saying, because this is, what he's saying there is, don't worry, webhead, though the world may mock other... It's really hard to read. Though the world may mock other late-night cable news pundits, it will soon marvel at the mighty might of me, the spectacular Stephen Colbert, which is that's very similar to what Spider-Man says. Though the world may mock Peter Parker, it will marvel at the amazing Spider-Man or something. So it's very similar to that. The issue itself, and that's a variant cover art. One of these days, I'll actually buy it. I've just got it on my phone, but if it's not too expensive, I might buy it just to have. But the other cover art is like the Green Goblin with his mask off, and it's like, oh wow, it's Norman Osborn. We've known that for a long time. Like, lame. But the comic itself really isn't too great, and we don't have any mail. I don't know if they're what I've got is like a. I mean, we're not really going to go through it that much, but what I've got is a downloaded version, and a lot of them cut out the ads and all that. So I don't know if there was mail published. I was trying to get a full version, and I couldn't find one online, so sorry. But so like there might be mail in it if any of my listeners I think we've got one more out there. If you know for sure, let me know. I am curious if there's mail in it. If I end up finding it and buying it, I'll bring it up too. But it
I think we are each other's listeners.
yeah, pretty much. It's me, you, and Sean. And Enrique. I don't think Enrique listens to any of these. I think he. No, we love Enrique. Enrique
Couldn't join us because he was stuck in the bathroom again.
He has cat AIDS.
Oh, okay.
It's rough. No, he doesn't. But he's got a lot going on. You know, I mean, family and work. So, like, I mean,
So that means we just don't have a life, or
yeah. Well, I'm not going to speak for you, but that's pretty much true for me. This is my life. It's all about reading fan mail in published comics. God, Jesus. But so anyway, in this comic, what happens is, have you heard me? I've bitched and complained a lot on this show about this story called Brand New Day. Have you heard about it?
no?
Okay. Oh boy. Well, the Spider-Man comics have been terrible for about 20 years at least, since the Clone Saga in the 90s. Like, the Clone Saga in the 90s like derailed it and it never came back. After the Clone Saga, they fished themselves out of that hole by bringing back the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, who's been dead since the 70s, which was a pivotal storyline. That's terrible. And then, so they fished themselves out of that by hiring J. Michael Straczynski, who, like, is awful. Like, he might have... I don't know. I think he was a writer for, like, Babylon 5 or something like that. I don't remember, but it's like, fine, but you didn't do a good job here. Like, I mean, he really butchered the character. And they tried to match it with the Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi movies at the time, which, if you remember, the Sam Raimi movies didn't have web shooter. He had, like, organic webbing or whatever.
Right, right.
So they, like, used magic or something to give him organic in the comics, and that was terrible. So they write themselves out of that one. You know, not everything has to match the movies.
No.
Okay, and so then Civil War came, and Civil War is awful. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure the movie's going to be good, but the comic is terrible. And Civil War. At the beginning, Iron Man reveals his identity. Now, like, if there's one thing I always felt like, even when I was a kid, and I love how they did this in the movies, why do Iron Man and Thor have secret identity? Like, I hated that. Like, Thor, I think they kind of wrote that out eventually with the Doctor. See, he had a secret identity of Dr. Don. Yeah. Dr. Don Blake was his secret identity, and he was a handicapped doctor, which is like,
really?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Like,
okay.
It's terrible, but like the Tony Stark thing, it's like nothing about that. Like, I wasn't too aware of Thor when I was a kid, and I think by that point they had already written out Dr. Don Blake, like almost to the point where, if not completely, almost completely, like years ago. But even when I was a kid, I would read Iron Man and think, why does he have a secret identity? It doesn't even make sense. Iron Man wasn't a very well-developed character. But it didn't make sense because it's like, well, his whole story is that Iron Man is his bodyguard. Well, if he's his bodyguard, why aren't they together in the room ever? And I know that's always been the joke, like, why aren't Clark Kent and Superman in the same room
together?
But here's the thing. Clark Kent... his personal life, his supposed personal life, didn't have anything to do with Superman, so you could get away with that.
Right.
Lois Lane was the reporter. Clark Kent was just some dumb reporter that sucked.
Who's a klutz.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you could get away with that. I mean, to an extent. With this, you really can't. It's like, no, the bodyguard has to be around him at least once in a while.
Yeah,
And
you'd
then
think.
and then not only that, but it's like way to rip off Batman. And again, it's like wouldn't people know, like Stark Industries, Iron Man flies around, wouldn't people know about this? And then he's got like weird problems with his chest, but he's always sleeping around, and it's like, does he leave his shirt on every time he has sex? Like so nothing ever about his identity made sense, and it's stupid anyway. Like why would he care if he has a secret identity or not? He didn't have like friends or family. Like he was just some rich guy. He could do whatever he wants. Like so, I mean, it really was a terrible thing. So going back to Civil War, that's how it opened. I know, like I keep. There's a point to my rambles. They always come back around. Going back to Civil War, they started off with Iron Man revealing his identity as Tony Stark, which was probably 40 years overdue. Like they should have done that from the beginning. Here's the thing: this was probably 2005. No one cared about Iron Man. The movies weren't out yet.
No one started caring about Iron Man, I guess, imagine, until after the first one came
Right.
out, right?
Yeah, and he may be the most popular superhero now, but 2 years before the movie came out, he was a nothing character. Like, he was a B-list. Like, I mean, he was, with Marvel, you've got Spider-Man and Wolverine, probably. And then you've got Hulk. Thor even was more popular than. I mean, Thor was more well known than Iron Man. I mean, Iron Man was a B-list character. Like, yeah, he was popular within Marvel, but outside of Marvel, no one knew who he was.
So if you weren't a follower of Marvel, you just didn't really know.
No, you wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, you would know who Spider-Man and Hulk were. Probably Wolverine. You'd know who Captain America was, probably Thor, but you would not. I would guess if you did not read Marvel Comics, you wouldn't know who Iron Man was. So Marvel was like, well, crap, that really didn't bring us the publicity we wanted. Let's have Spider-Man reveal his identity. So Spider-Man revealed his identity. That was terrible because it doesn't, it's like, for one character, it works. For this character, it doesn't work. Like, this character has never, it's not like he's working for the government. What he's doing is illegal. Like, being a vigilante is illegal, which is what Spider-Man is.
Same thing with Batman.
Exactly, but Batman is not going to reveal his identity.
Oh, hell no.
Spider-Man has friends and family. Lots of them. Like, doing that was terrible. So, of course, in order to write themselves out of this hole, Aunt May dies, and they make this story called Brand New Day. And Brand New Day, Spider-Man sells his marriage to the devil, which doesn't make sense. So now they could, do a soft reboot and sort of pick and choose what they're rebooting. So Peter Parker and Mary Jane are no longer married. What does that say about Peter Parker to where he's going to give up his marriage to his wife because his aunt died? It's terrible. So
I know this is probably off topic, but how often do the comics really completely reboot?
Marvel never does.
Reboot their characters.
DC does about every 20 years. Marvel never does.
So Marvel is just one continuous.
Yeah. And that's kind of their problem. If they were going to reboot, they should have done it all the way. And they didn't. So now, going back to this story, this issue that we're looking at, since Peter's marriage no longer exists and some things have been rebooted, pick and choose whatever you want, Harry Osborn is alive. Harry Osborn died in 1992. And again, another pivotal story. He's alive. He's arguing with Norman about something. Who cares? It's stupid. Whatever. But at the end, there's a second story. It's only a few pages long, where Spider-Man and Stephen Colbert team up to fight a supervillain. And it's pretty funny. It's not great, but it's so much better than the main course story, like this little dessert story is. And it's pretty funny. You know, other things. Stephen Colbert with Marvel. He was given Captain America's shield. Um, let's see if I can find his quote. Not only that, but they drew a picture of him as the Falcon when, recently Falcon took over as Captain America in the comics. So Joe Quesada drew a picture of Stephen Colbert as a Falcon, which I had posted on our Facebook. Let's see. Stephen Colbert is also like, and this comes out sometimes even through his character, the biggest dork, like biggest nerd I've ever seen of a celebrity. He's read the Similarion, which is the ultimate Tolkien guide to every. It's like I tried it, I couldn't, and really, like, I mean, I'm not big enough to big enough of a Hobbit or a Lord of the Rings fan to really read it, and I tried, and it's like insane. So he's read it, and they had him on doing, like, he'll do trivia of Lord of the Rings, and it's stuff that no one would know about. Like,
Wow.
He's had like Ian McKellen on and like actors from the movies, and they're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Big Star Wars fan.
Okay, Star Wars fan I can understand. Lord of the Rings I've never gotten into. I've seen parts of the movies. My wife's a bigger fan of the Lord, at least of the movies, than I am, and which surprises my wife. But I can't remember if she's read the book or not. But I don't know. It's just something about the Lord of the Rings stories I've just never been able to get into. I don't know why.
They're not that great. I read them when I loved The Hobbit when I was a kid, which I think was more written for kids.
Right.
And then I read Lord of the Rings. I read the first two books, and I really liked them. And by the third one, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I barely finish it if I did. Like, I just could not handle any more, like, fighting dwarves. Like, it's like, I just can't do this anymore.
It's like fighting hairy little midgets.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, I guess I can understand the appeal of the Lord of the Rings / Hobbit stuff, but at least from the movie point of view. But I don't know. It's just, I guess that's too fantasy for me to really get into. I mean, if it was more, I guess, Lord of the Rings set in space and it was more Star Warsian, I might be able to get into it. But it's just too much Dungeons and Dragons to me in a certain sense, and I don't know if that's really even a good comparison.
Oh,
but,
it is.
But I never was a Dungeons and Dragons thing, and I mean, I may be a geek and a nerd in a lot of ways. I'll admit. I mean, Star Trek, Star Wars, some of those things, but I just never gotten into that.
I always have had a little bit of a soft spot for fantasy. Not as much as science fiction, but for fantasy, I have always had a little bit of a soft spot. The problem is I get tired of it real easily, and I do it in Lord of the Rings. And the movies are the same way as the books. Love the first one, love the second one, and then the third one, who I know a lot of people say the third one's the best, but the third one I'm like, and it's good, but it's like, I can't do this anymore. The third movie is actually a lot different from the third book. The third movie actually takes stuff from book 2 and goes from there.
Well, I don't understand how Peter Jackson can take one book of The Hobbit and turn it into 3 movies.
Oh, I'll tell you how. He took stuff from like Radagast the Brown. He took characters and storylines from the Lord of the Rings books that didn't make it into the movie, cram it into these Hobbit stories, also cram in stuff from the Similarion into there. So it's actually not really it's like the Hobbit's in there, but it's like crammed with like every other Tolkien thing ever too.
Yeah.
But here's a really good quote. Stephen Colbert. About 6 years ago in Marvel, this is about his shield. If you ever watch the show, he was given Captain America's shield. About 6 years ago in Marvel, Captain America got assassinated, and I got a letter and the shield, Colbert told Seth Meyers during an interview. I got a letter from Joe Quesada, the head of Marvel Comics, that said, "We read Cap's will, and in his will, he said there was only one person patriotic enough to wield the solid vibranium shield, and it was you, Stephen Colbert." So that's why he had the shield. But yeah,
Marvel must really think highly of him to put him in their comics and stuff and do that kind of stuff.
Joe Quesada loves being a guest on Stephen Colbert. Like I think they do, but I think also they kind of, I think once Colbert got popular, I think Marvel was like, hey, let's start giving him stuff, and they knew that Colbert was a geek, a Marvel fan, so they're like, hey, let's show up, let's give him stuff and show up on a show, and we can advertise. But I do think they think highly of him. There was one issue where he explained, like, Captain America's died like 10 times in the past 6 years, because this last time Captain America died, he's explaining how it happened and how it's like the Mandarin. It wasn't the Mandarin, but it was somebody who looked like the Mandarin, like, sent some sort of black hole, and he's like showing the comics while he's talking as a graphic, and he's just like going into it, and it's like he's like totally geeking out, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. But
so how many people in the comics have played Captain America besides Steve Rogers? And from what I know,
as far as there was a guy in the 50s who after the war, superhero comics weren't too popular.
Right.
It went more to westerns
and
sci-fi,
because of the comics
horror
code stuff and all that stuff. They kind of got away from it for a while, didn't they?
Well, no, I just don't think it was too popular. I think Batman and Superman were still popular, but the rest of it was just, I think kids were more into like science fiction and horror and westerns, so those were really big. But they were still, sometime in the 50s for a while, they tried revamping Captain America, and this time he's fighting commies, of course, instead of Nazis. Well, then when Stan Lee wrote in the Avengers where they find Captain America frozen in ice, I think the initial reaction was just to pretend like the 50s Captain America comics didn't happen. Well, since that's not the Marvel way, they ended up saying that Captain America was an impersonator who later became a big villain in like the 70s or 80s. I don't remember what they call him, but he's a villain. So there's that guy. Then there's I think Winter Soldier took over.
Right, because I read that because when I was reading up for when Captain America Winter Soldier was coming out, I kind of read where, Bucky took over the. There's a whole storyline there,
and finally, now
Falcon,
and I gotta say, like Falcon should have done it before Bucky. Like I know, like maybe they were scared to go for a black Captain America at first, but like Falcon is more of Captain America's partner. Like, yeah, Bucky was his sidekick back in the 40s, back when every superhero had to have a sidekick. Yeah. But like he'd been dead. Like Stan Lee wrote the story because like Stan Lee hated sidekicks. He thought teenagers could be superheroes too. So he just wrote the story that Bucky died in the war. And then they bring him back as Winter Soldier in the 2000s, which is a great story. But, it's like, why is he taking over the Shield? Like what has he done that, like, he's been a crazy assassin for all these years. What has he done that's so great that he should have it? Like, looking back, it's like, yeah, it should have gone to Falcon. Falcon's been Captain America's partner since the 60s in real time. So, but there you go. I think that's going to have to cover it because I think this show's going a little long. But Stephen Colbert, we're going to miss you. We're going to miss you.
Well, you'll get to see him. We know he takes over after Letterman leaves.
Yeah, that's Stephen Colbert. I'm saying we're going to miss Stephen Colbert. If you know what I mean. But anyway, Reggie, it's a pleasure as always. Thank you for being on our show.
Oh, no problem.
And we'll have this we shall do this again. Have a good night, everybody.